Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Stephen Lee, your humble, gracious guide with another transmission, Blackwall Podcast. One of the only places where objective, raw, and real is the premium currency in this financial space that we find ourselves in. Blackwall Podcast was created as a way for black and brown investors globally to share and disseminate all types of ideas, stories, strategies, and other financial education platforms throughout, let's call it, a common language, right? And that common language that we have comes from a common experience. And so I want to encourage everyone, regardless of socioeconomic levels, region, experience level, I want to encourage everyone to come on into the family room and experience this transmission. My name is Stephen Lee, your humble, gracious guide. I am a buy and hold investor, natural bear, and I bring to you objective, raw, and real experiences that I've had in the space of investment throughout my 10 years. Ups, downs, lefts, rights, gains and losses, all of those things I try to bring to paint a clear picture of what investing and being independent as far as growing and wealth building in this world that we live in. I feel that part of what I've always wanted to do and make sure that I kept in the forefront of the mission statement of the podcast was that I didn't want this to ever be like an infomercial, you know? I didn't want this to be something where it's like, oh, look how great I am, look how much money I made on this flip, look how much this, look how much that. I think that that's the template that exists in the current space that we occupy, the ecosystem. And I don't think it's really helpful. I was speaking with a buddy of mine about the formula of I got rich in however long, you know, how I made my first $1 million in 30 days, 90 days, whatever, you know, the title of the YouTube clip says. And I think that it's extremely disingenuous because it's never the transaction that bared fruit, if you will, that was the one that sent you over the edge for your $1 million or whatever your goal is, first 100,000, first 10,000. It was all the preparation and the work that you put in before that moment, in my personal opinion, that needs to be celebrated, and that's what got you to your reward. I feel that part of my responsibility of reverberating and reflecting the trials and tribulations of a buy and hold investor is to give a 360 picture. So growing up as a kid and as a teenager, I loved vivid rap music. You know, whether it would be storytelling or just the rawness of their lyrics, I wanted to really feel that I understood where they came from, where they're at, as well as what they were going through on a daily basis. Whether I really understood what they were saying or their vernacular, their accent, that was secondary to being able to feel what they were saying. And so as I do these transmissions, I want to make sure that I'm leaving a chronicle so that the younger me in my 20s or even in my teens would be able to hear this message and distill it and disseminate it and understand that when I bump my head or when something doesn't go right, I'm not off track. I think that a lot of times in the investment space, in the money space, in the adulting space, when something doesn't go right, we think that we did something wrong or something's not on track. And sometimes when something is not going right, that means it's going exactly as planned. That's a real possibility. And I want that possibility to be celebrated and acknowledged on the path of business. I think that if you're expecting to land every business task that you set yourself out for, or every benchmark that you set your company for, if you're living and dying on 100% accomplishment rate, I think you're going to set yourself up for disappointment, because a lot of this stuff has nothing to do, I don't want to say nothing to do with you, but it's outside of some of your control. I want to take this time also to thank our sponsors for today's episode, 40 Acre Tech. Yeah, you see it. A software company that focuses on security and education. We're in the startup grind, if you will, when it comes with that. Full disclosure, I'm a partner in the company. And we're in a testing and MVP, minimum viable product creation, and I guess I want to say breathing the idea into life. Now that we got our sea legs a little bit, we've stumbled around. We did the Afrotech. We did a lot of cool things. We ran into some people, learned some terminologies, and now I think we have a better understanding and clear-cut compass and map to where we're trying to go as a company. So shout out to 40 Acre Tech. I'd also like to shout out some guests that I'm working on. I'm looking to bring for season 4, Sport Mode Living. I'm looking to bring a different caliber of guests. And when I mean different caliber of guests, I mean I want to reach outside of my immediate social circle and my immediate bandwidth. I want to reach out to some people that maybe I don't know, because I've spent the past 3 seasons pretty much just celebrating the people that I know and in my network that I've seen and know what they're doing, because I felt like there's so many people that are actually doing big things that don't get the kudos and the acknowledgement that I think they deserve. First person I think of out of my mind is Andre Payne, a builder in Atlanta. I've had an interview with him, great brother. But I just thought that when I saw him doing ground up builds, I thought that was very important. And come to find out, that was for 2023, that was the hottest sector of the real estate, was new build, new constructions. So apparently we had our finger on the pulse there as a media company, and he had his finger on the pulse as far as a business model. And so to be able to highlight that in real time, I think is really special, and that's why I do the podcast. Next order of business. I want to talk about something that was touched on in a previous episode, which is about trying to disseminate and decipher between a trend and a fad in the financial business market space. I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about that because I think it goes into a larger issue that I have found myself having as an investor right now at the beginning of 2024. I've noticed it in the larger markets, the S&P, the Russell 2000. I've noticed that we've kind of gotten off to a little bit of a stumble. The end of the year of 2023 was like a freight train the way it came to the end. It felt like up until New Year's Day, there was business and motion, perpetual motion, it felt like. On the other side of that, now I realize some of that end of year motion wasn't really worth a shit. It was a lot of fluff and hot air. And now we're kind of decompressing from it. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, we just came off of an extreme cold snap. I was actually worried about some of my properties because these properties and these materials and the city and the infrastructure is not used to this weather. It's fluctuation of weather. It's not used to 11 degrees one day and 50 degrees the next. So I was concerned. It seemed like we got through it pretty well with minimum damage as far as pipes and stuff like that on all my properties. But it did give me a lot of time to think about, why is it that in times when I don't have a deal being funded, I don't have anything new in business happening, I don't have any new revenue streams coming, why do I feel such like a failure, you know? I feel so unaccomplished. I start thinking about, have I made the right decisions in business? It's weird to be at a place where you realize that sometime reaching that plateau and reaching that plane, in the ascent to the top of the mountain, you need that. You need that base camp, if you will, right? Like that feeling of a base camp. Like, let me regroup. Let me see what my materials are. Let me see where my hydration levels are. All those things you naturally kind of do on a hike because your body's telling you need them, right? But in ascension on a hike of business, if you will, it's hard to decipher when your mind is telling you to take this break. Let's find camp. Let's find shelter for the night, if you will, and regroup. Or if you're being lazy, or if you're making excuses for yourself, right? That's a very tough, job to play. It's like you're playing referee and doctor at the same time, and motivational speaker and banker and this and that. So as an entrepreneur and as an investor, we can't get comfortable in one hat. You know, what's working out today and what's bringing dividends today, it might not have the same impact and effect tomorrow, but that doesn't mean switch up your whole plan, right? You can't, every time something goes wrong, switch up your whole plan, your whole infrastructure. If that's how you think you're going to get ahead, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. There's things that are happening in real time every day that might not last till tomorrow, but in the moment seem like it's the end of the fucking world, right? It seems like it's the absolute end of the world. I can't believe this is happening. This is the worst thing ever. But in real life, tomorrow, the next day, you might have taken some time and thought of a way outside of the box, right? So I know sometimes I ramble, but that's why I have a podcast. I say all this to say is that your confidence in your trajectory and your path is what's going to determine how you see something as a trend or a fad, right? Just because it's working out in other arenas and it's making money in for other people, let's just say that, it doesn't mean it fits into your skill set, into your life, right? For you, that's just a fad. You're not really going to be able to latch on and make money, right? If you can't see yourself doing something for, call it 2 years for free and another 3 breaking even, I don't suggest you start that business. And I'm not saying because you won't outperform or underperform. I'm just saying going into it, that mindset will allow you to absorb, right, the ups and downs of that growth. A fad is, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this because I've seen it, right? I've seen a fad be turned into a trend in a business model. I've seen it. We all have. Think of any mask or niche, the little carriers for the hand sanitizers, all those little COVID tchotchkes, let's call it. That's a fad. We're not going to have COVID forever. There's not going to be mask mandates forever. Everyone's not going to be obsessed with wipes and hand sanitizers forever. But for that 2-3 year period, it was hot and people were making money, right? if you just had a plug on wipes or gloves or sanitizer or toilet paper or any of these things, you really could have ran it up. And then if you ran it up and you got, I don't want to say more serious, but more organized and more corporate and decided to really scale it, you could have got a storefront, right? Because commercial real estate came down so much. A lot of places closed, a lot of office buildings, the people didn't come back to work. So there was a lot of storefronts and commercial real estate that was cheaper. You could have got something, right? And now you could have parlayed that into whatever retail businesses you have today. Because we saw a boom in after the pandemic in people going out and doing actual retail shopping, because we were all pinned up for years doing it over our phone. So you could have enjoyed a nice run and established yourself a real business and a business model from a fad, from a one-time blip opportunity, right? I've also seen people take an opportunity, a fad, a trend, right? Call it a trend. Call it a trend, because we already did the fad. I've seen people take a trend and not realize that this trend was going to peak, and then it was going to fall, and then it was going to level off, like all other things, right? When something's hot and it's new and it's making that transition from a trend to a fad, it's still going to be getting that elevation and that trajectory where the price is just going to continue to tick up. It's trying to find this natural equilibrium. Bitcoin, food trucks, legalized marijuana. Just three things I just listed right there. On the surface, very different, but reacted the same. At one point, they were trends. You know, they were trends that people didn't understand were going to stay in our society. At what level? Hey, we didn't know at the time, because it seemed like they're fads, right? Oh, digital currency, it's a fad. It's not real. Then Bitcoin hits 60,000, it becomes a trend. Now everybody wants to do it. Now it drops to 20. Now it's back to 40. You see what I'm saying? It's now leveling off. Same thing with marijuana prices. I remember when pounds were going $4,000 or $5,000. True story. This is 20 years ago, call it. Now they're going for $2,000. Serious. $2,000. You can go out there and get a pound of some of the world's best cannabis legally right now. Right? Just that change in market is for no other reason than it found its equilibrium. Right? This is what it's actually worth. It's not about the hype, it's not about the allure, it's not about the outside compression of demand or supply. It's the natural market flow. Food trucks. Atlanta, when food trucks came, you know, they started in LA, as far as not start the whole food truck concept, but being popularized, being commercialized, being cool, being a status symbol. I have a food truck at my event. That really was made mainstream in LA. I was there. When that trend came over to Atlanta, it was like wildfire. It was like printing money. It really, really was. I don't think people can really appreciate it because we didn't know how to use social media the same way. But imagine if we knew how to use hashtags, if we had, Twitter and Instagram and all these things were used the way that they're used now. They were there, but they weren't really, the tools weren't used right. It would have been so much, I don't want to say bigger, but it would have been definitely more well documented. I think it was definitely a movement. It was a time. there was a lot of empty real estate spots that were housing food truck events, right? This was before Atlanta real estate became, it was so valuable. Now we don't have lots anymore, essentially. That's a conversation for another day. At least we don't have commercial lots. What I want to be appreciated is that identifying those things takes a certain level of discipline, right? Because it's going to be different for everybody. There is no one size fits all. Oh, this is just a great idea, everybody should do it. No. That's not how this is going to go. How this is going to go is that you, as the brains of the operation, because if it's your money, you should be the brains of the operation to some capacity, right? And if that means that the brains, you see your best play is to outsource and to gain expertise from other people, then that's what needs to happen. But I believe you should be an active investor. You should be able to understand the moves and the direction that the companies that you invest in are going. Even if you're not at the person at the helm, right? Because I have no problem with that. You still should understand and be able to explain that direction. If somebody asks you, hey, why do you invest in Coca-Cola? You should be able to explain, right? Something that detached, you should still be able to explain. I think you should be able to know what the mix is in your 401k portfolio. I think you should know what you're investing in. Even if you're doing it just out of your check, whatever, I think you should at least once a year sit down and try to digest, what exactly do I have? Just my own personal opinion. But I digress. I think that the importance of not having shiny thing syndrome in business, right? And I think that's so ironic for me to say because I have that in my real life. In my personal life, I have it. I know I have it because I have to watch myself. I have to be very careful. Oh, no. Stay focused. Have to put those blinders on like a horse, right? In business and in matters of business, I'm probably too rigid and laser focused. I probably need to widen my look sometime more than I would need to narrow it down, right? I think I'm probably not the only person that's like that. Who I am in business is not who I am personally. Not even close. That's probably why it's hard for people who know me personally to do business with me. Right? That's probably one of the main reasons is because I'm so different. Right? I'm so different. In my personal life, I'm very, whatever, willy-nilly. It's not that big of a deal. Get to it when I want to. In business, oh man, you think we're out here in a shark cage with stakes around our neck. That's how serious I make it seem and feel sometimes. Do I think that's the best way of handling things? No, not all the time. I sure don't. Is it my go-to? It sure is. And I'm going to be honest about it. And I think it works in certain circumstances. In certain circumstances, it doesn't. Hey, shout out to my son. Today's his birthday. Love you, boy. Yeah. My son. My SL2. Yeah. I had to think about that because, I have children, as everyone knows. If you've listened to this podcast, I have 4 children. And I have 1 son. And God has blessed me with my son, just like he's blessed me with my 3 daughters. But today on his day, I want to go ahead and talk about that confidence on the vision that he brought to me. When I had my son, I was in the place of figuring out whether what I was doing was a fad or a trend, or was it going to turn into a scalable business for me? Yeah, believe it or not. And we're talking about my culinary career here. Moved to LA. And at that time, being a chef was this was like that Roble, G. Garvin era. So if you are a black chef, because there's so few of us in the world, people tried to kind of, oh, you're like this one or you're like that one, and I'm like neither. I'm more Anthony Bourdain. God be pleased with his soul. And having my son allowed me to see that I was playing for something more than just my own personal gratification. It allowed me to really get better. And I'm not saying I was, just magically changed overnight. I'm saying I got better at understanding